Hey, New Life. Thank you again so much for having me out on Sunday morning. It really was a great joy to be there. Every time I do guest speaking at other churches, I do my best to, bless that other church and share something that I'm passionate about, or share something that I'm learning or even wrestling with at Collective. But it's just different when I come to New Life because so much of the time that I'm there is truly a blessing for me as well. I loved seeing you all. I loved having conversations with so many of you after church. To be honest, I felt super encouraged by people who've known me since I was a kid, who don't hold it against me, and have just been a huge encouragement for Collective. And my hope is that you walked away Sunday feeling challenged. And my hope is that you walked away thinking about and navigating and trying to wrestle with whatever your next step should be. Because here's the truth. We all have next steps that we can take. We all have next steps in our faith that we need to be pursuing, including myself. And for some people, it's giving for the first time. For some people, it's signing up to serve. For a lot of people, it's just going to be inviting other people to church, getting to know your neighbors. One of the challenges that we brought forward in our church during the pandemic was get to know the people that you live by and start praying for them by name. And so if we want to bring grace into this world, we want to make an impact. There's multiple ways that you can do that. My hope is that you've been wrestling with that over the last few days, and talking to Tess and talking to Tom and talking to the staff at New Life as you try to navigate what that is. Because the truth is, no matter where you are in your faith, there's a next step that you can take. There's a way that you can move forward in that faith. When I was driving home on Sunday, I started thinking about what I shared with you all and really what I've been reading in the Bible lately. And it made me think about what Paul said a little bit further in 1 Corinthians 12. And we talked about how he says, we all play a part in this body. But if you move a little bit further in 1 Corinthians 12, this is what he says. He says, so God has put the body together, right? This idea that God intended the church to be this way, a body where everybody plays a role. And he goes on to say that this makes harmony among the members so that all the members care for each other. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad. All of you together are Christ's body, and each of you is a part of it. And so one thing that's really important about what Paul is saying is that he's writing this to a church, right? And to a just general church. He's not writing this to the staff of a church. He's not writing this just to the leaders of a church. This is a letter to a church that if you are a part of that church, you are a part of that body. And so some of you, going to New Life, you're a part of that body, whether you've taken that next step or not. But one of the things that really stuck out to me in this is how he talks about how if one part suffers, all the parts suffer. If one part is honored, all the parts are honored. Over the last few months, one of the things that churches have seen and pastors are struggling with is volunteers and getting people to come back or check the box for first time and serve. And just this week, I got a message from a guy that was saying, hey, our volunteer numbers are down and we don't know what to do. And honestly, I kind of felt bad because we don't feel that way at Collective. We don't see the same tension. And I'm trying to figure out, is it because we're new? Is it because we have a new building? Trying to explain all these reasons of why our team is so strong at our church. And then reading what Paul writes, it started to click. One of the reasons why people love serving in our church is because they realize that they're in it together. Because they realize that they're bumping shoulders with people who are struggling with the same thing they are. They're just serving next to one another. One of the reasons why people love serving in our church is because they realize that when one person is honored, they're all honored. And because of that, there's just this really healthy culture in our church. And the same is true at New Life. There's this incredible culture of people who serve and who understand, hey, we're in this together. And so many of you during COVID and even right now are struggling with community, are struggling to find people. And one of the best ways you can do that is by taking your next step and serving. One of the best pieces of community that you will ever have is bumping shoulders with someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't sound like you, who hasn't been through the same things as you, and getting to know them as you serve God. And that's what Paul's talking about. He's talking about a group of people who are on mission together. He's talking about a group of people that realize, hey, not all of us have this really important role, but it still matters. And if we're doing well, everyone that's part of the body is doing well. And if we're suffering, everybody's suffering. And so I just want to continue to challenge you to take that next step. And whatever it may be, maybe it's serving. I talked a little bit more about that than anything else. And maybe it's giving and trusting that New Life and God will use that to bless the community. And maybe it's just meeting your neighbors, praying for them, inviting them, sharing with them what you are a part of. Because right now, I'm talking about suffering, right now, we're still suffering. We're still struggling. I think a lot of us have a false sense of security of what's going on, and as things continue to seemingly get worse, we're struggling. We're continuing to struggling, and it's getting harder. And Paul makes it very clear that one of the ways that we break through that suffering is by being a community together, serving together, creating space for other people to bump into Jesus. When I first started going to New Life, my whole family was pretty skeptical about church and just everything that they were doing. But one of the first things that we were challenged to do was serve. And I remember as this 12-year-old kid, back when we were in Ormond Stone, we used to meet in the gym there. We outgrew the other spot and moved in the building. And we used to lay down these huge mats. And they're on this cart, and if you remember in elementary school where you had that construction paper cart that had these massive rolls of purple paper, it was kind of the same thing, but there was this mat that we would pull out to make sure that we didn't spill anything on the gym floor. And that was the first time while being at New Life where I realized, even as a kid, that I was a part of something bigger than myself. That I was a part of something that it was a huge honor to be a part of. It was when we were tearing down and picking up those seats, and I'm working alongside these men and women who I'd never met before, who I wouldn't have met any other way, in order to tear that space down, to turn it back into a high school so students could be there, so the next week we could come back. And so, speaking from my own experience, in my own life, and my own time at New Life, taking that next step, putting yourself in a place to serve, putting yourself in a place of community, putting yourself in a place of seeing something beyond what faith is for you, but what it could be for other people, it truly is life-changing. And the truth is, Paul understood something that we all need to kind of connect with. And so again, I'm going to challenge you to be aggressive again. Don't get through the end of this week and not take a next step. Don't get to Sunday morning next week with another speaker and move on. Really wrestle with this. Challenge yourself. Take a risk. Put yourself out there. Be a little bit vulnerable and allow God to move in that space. God can do so much more than we ever could have imagined. When all he asks for us is to take a little bit of a step forward and a little bit of a step forward and a little bit of trust and a little bit of faith. And so do it. Don't get to the end of this and check out. Send that email right now. Open up the app. Reach out to somebody at New Life and try to figure out what is my next step in faith. And ultimately, once you do that, take a step back and watch what God can do. So proud of you guys. I love this church so much. And I hope I get to see you guys soon.